Hi, I'm Jennifer Zollet.
And I'm Larkin Bell. Welcome to our podcast, A Female Lens.
In this special bonus episode, we partner with Free the Bid and chatted with founder and director Alma Har'el to hear about their new relaunch. Alma was incredible, and we learned so much about the origins of Free the Bid, why it's important, and a lot about her own thoughts on creativity and collaboration.
Free the Bid is a 501c3 nonprofit initiative advocating on behalf of women directors for equal opportunities to bid on commercial jobs in the global advertising industry and beyond. The initiative was founded in September 2016 by director Alma Har'el, who we talked to in this episode, as a response to her own personal experience of the lack of opportunities for women directors in advertising.
Free the Bid is evolving into Free the Work, which is a holistic talent discovery service that connects creators with those who hire within film, TV, and advertising. We really enjoyed chatting with Alma and hope you enjoy the conversation as well.
Stay tuned. We would love to just start at the beginning. If you could talk about what experiences you might have had as a director that led you to creating Free the Bid.
That's a good place to start. Appreciate that. So I moved here to the U.S. At the ripe age of 30, and I was kind of, inducted into the reality of films here. I came from, I was born in Tel Aviv and grew up in Israel. Moved here, and when I moved here, I had to kind of start from scratch. Not that I had so much that I've done in Israel. I have never directed a feature film or anything, but I was already kind of working in television and doing music videos and some commercials. And when I got to here, I realized that it's really going to take a lot, and I didn't have at the time the understanding of the disadvantage I'm already starting with being a woman. So I really started with like music videos. I was very proactive, and I found bands I liked and would go and ask them if I can do a music video for them. I found a CD in Amoeba Records of a band called Beirut, and I kind of really got into, I love them so much. So I worked with them, did their first few music videos. I did like 3 or 4 music videos with them, Zach Condon, and kind of realized, got signed with Partisan, and I kind of saw slowly how all my male peers are kind of climbing up the ladder of budgets of music videos and getting more and more work, getting connected to bigger artists or bigger budgets, and I was still not kind of connecting the dots, obviously, and there was no awareness the way there is in the past 2 or 3 years about all of this. Not I didn't have it anyway. And so as I was doing it, it was really obvious that the only way to kind of break out of a cycle that didn't allow for more opportunity was to just leave everything behind and go and just shoot a film or do something. And I went out and shot a documentary film by myself with no crew, and just like with a camera and the sound, and it ended up winning Tribeca Film Festival. And when I got into, after that, a situation where I had more opportunities and started directing commercials, then everything kind of clicked, because I saw that every commercial I was bidding on, I was always the only woman. And when I did get a campaign, I often heard, "You're the first woman director we've ever worked with." So that kind of really blew my mind. And at the time when I launched it, it was before the Women's March. So again, kind of a time where a lot of stuff was bubbling underneath, but not still so much in popular culture the way we see it now. And obviously this is not the first wave of feminism, as we know, but in between waves, there's a tendency to forget everything sometimes that we fight for. So it was just like a moment in time where it became really clear to me that something is very wrong and that it's systemic. And I think that's what really caused, that's what really made me kind of go and, decide to start Free the Bid.
Yeah, to start an initiative like this, you must be very passionate about filmmaking and storytelling, and we're curious where that passion comes from and, how it has continued to grow.
I think that when I grew up in Israel, like I said, and my parents, who I love very much, had a very turbulent relationship. My father is an alcoholic, and they had separated a lot. And when they wouldn't see each other, when my father wasn't living with us, he would come and pick us up, and he would take us to see movies. That was kind of what we would do together. He kind of never had his own apartment, so we never had anywhere to go with him to stay. We would just kind of meet and go to see movies together, and it really became something, I guess, very important in my life somehow at an early age, but I wasn't very aware of it. Again, I didn't go straight ahead into movies. I went into theater first, and I was in front of the camera a lot of years. So really only later I slowly kind of understood that the only way to have a complete vision is to be behind the camera. And I'm very passionate in general about storytelling because I think it's just one of the only ways to create empathy and to take people somewhere that can cause them to examine who they are, what the world is, to have an experience outside of the mundane, and to understand the potential of humanity, and of the psyche. It's almost an opportunity to dream together. I think I studied filmmaking more in my dreams than anywhere else. I never went to film school, and I think I was really, more than I was ever obsessed with films, I was obsessed with dreams. I was just really kind of fascinated by the idea we all go to sleep at night and see things. And the feeling you can have in a dark space or sharing images like that really makes it feel like a collective, experience.
Yeah, that makes me excited.
Yeah. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, I know.
What are some statistics behind the systemic inequality in the media world that people may be surprised to hear?
So I think there's two things we can talk about. One is obviously TV and film, which is something that is monitored more closely lately by the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism and Stacy Smith. So if you are familiar with those studies, then basically they surveyed about 1,100 films that were made in the last 11 years, and they found out that just 4% were directed by women, which equates to 22 men to 1 woman. And on top of that, they also found out how poorly the intersectionality is in those numbers. So probably out of all of these women, there were, I think, only 4 have been Black and Asian, but I'm not sure 100%. Of the 43 film directors who made movies between 2007 to 2017, I'm reading this, 4 have been Black, 2 Asian, and 1 Hispanic. But on top of that, I think that what really made me kind of jump out of my chair was when I was getting into advertising. And like I said, I realized early on that in order to sustain myself as an independent filmmaker that doesn't necessarily always pursues the most commercial fare, I had to support myself financially. And the way many male directors support themselves is through making commercials. So when you think about the advertising world for a second separately, we know that the average consumer is exposed to about 3,000 to 10,000 marketing messages a day, right? And like out of those, pretty much about, I mean, it's again, it's not extremely accurate, but that's estimated that about 96% of those or 94% of those were directed by men. And we know most of these men are white in very high numbers in the 90s. So it's brainwashing. I mean, that's what it is. It's a cultural brainwash that has started in the 50s and that has positioned women and people of color and people that have other definitions of gender that don't sit with the usual cis definitions, all of them, and of course people with disability, and not to speak about ageism. So it's a big umbrella of people that are suffering, I think, from this brainwash, from the images we put out, from the expectations we have, from the perspective that we put on all of those messages, which is always the male gaze, and, if I may say, the alpha male gaze, because we know that the people that thrive sometimes in those environments are a certain type of male. So that has been something that kind of really shocked me and caused me to feel like we are all living in a reality that very few people are creating, painting it for us, and hoping that Free the Bid has contributed in the past 2 years to changing some of that. And I think we do see some change in advertising, even bigger than in TV and film in terms of numbers.
So you founded Free the Bid, but we're curious also who was part of that early team that started to bring the vision to life, and what made you think that this idea could work towards a solution to the problems that you were witnessing?
So I'm a pretty compulsive person in terms of starting something. If I have an idea, I can't really say I was fully prepared to launching Free the Bid. There was no team. It was just me when I launched it. Before I started Free the Bid, I gave an interview that followed a commercial I directed for Stella Artois. It was a commercial that I got from an ad agency called Mother. The creative was Sasha Markova, and it was, for me, like a huge turning point in my realization that I spoke about before, because when I did it, I was told I was the first woman to ever direct a commercial for Stella Artois, and they were a brand that did a lot of commercials with filmmakers, like from Wim Wenders to Jonathan Glazer, and a lot of filmmakers I really loved, and they had a huge emphasis on working with filmmakers. But somehow I was the first woman, and that was kind of a breaking point, and I did an article about it. A man named PJ Pereira, who is the head of an ad agency in San Francisco called Pereira and Odell, who worked with me before on an Airbnb international campaign, the first campaign they did. We worked on it together. He reached out to me, we had dinner together, and he said, it has to happen in the bidding system. Like, we could do like a fourth bid for women. And I was like, I think they should be one of the three if we're doing it. And he agreed, and then we took it out to everybody we could through our contacts with literally a PDF I put together. Started sending it. As I was sending it, I was like, this is not going to work unless we have a database, because I knew that every time I speak about it to people, people say, but there are no women directors. There's only 5, there's only 10, and they're working. Everybody knows those excuses. I had a woman that was my assistant at the time, and we just kind of sat down and started to work on it and build it on my laptop. We started with 70 women. We didn't even ask for approval at the time from anybody. I just kind of put it together, very Israeli, and just put it together and really launched it. And before it launched, we already had some of the biggest ad agencies in the world committed to it, and brands like eBay and Coke and Visa and brands like that. So it was pretty massive right away. And then it was a matter of losing sleep for about 4 months and not knowing how to handle the size of it and how to scale it up until really HP, Antonio Lucio, who was the CMO of HP, saw me tweeting about it on Twitter and reached out to me and said he wants to help. And he gave us our first donation, which allowed me to hire, 6 months in, I think I hired Emma Reeves, who's now the executive director, and she's been a force of nature. So, it was kind of a very bumpy beginning. We just kind of threw myself into it. And I think we're doing something pretty ambitious right now too with our next launch. But that's how it started, yeah.
Yeah, just the way that you're talking about that, like the creating of it seems so akin to filmmaking, where it's like such an ambitious endeavor. Do you feel like the skill sets you had from filmmaking kind of translate to that, or was it kind of a deepening of something else?
It's such a good question. I've been thinking about it a lot the past month because we are now building something so big, and I've never built something like this before, that's almost essentially a service or a product that has so many implications and decisions. I think that definitely in films and filmmaking in general, you are sort of training to take a lot of decisions and work with a lot of people and bring the best out of people around you and have a clear vision and of what you want, or just counting on the fact that by making one choice after another you would get there. So there's definitely a skill set from that. I think that there's a lot of other skill sets that's involved in something like this. I'd like to think I got a lot of them from my mom, who was just like a really, really strong woman who always did everything with nothing. Just even when we had no money and were worried about buying food or paying rent every month, she still made our house feel really warm and like cultured. And I don't know, she would cut from books, she would cut art posters and frame them with wood and colorful wood. She would make herself build all these shelves, and she just always built things, and I think that I kind of got that from her, from being able to look at what's available and then what can you make from that. And that was a lot of what Free the Bid is connecting the dots between seeing where I could be helpful, what doesn't work, or who I can connect with who in order to make things work, and then just staying on that, and then getting more and more people that were passionate about building something together, like Emma and Chloe. And we have such a small team, but each person on that team and each woman that works with us is really kind of a powerhouse. So that's been very helpful.
After Free the Bid started experiencing success, working with brands and agencies, what encouraged you to start thinking and expanding globally?
When we started Free the Bid, it was right away we worked with a few brands, but it really became bigger once HP joined us, and there was more commitment from Visa and other brands that joined. And it was clear that once we tracked things, that the effect it's having on the numbers is kind of unheard of. We went with HP from 0 women directors to 59% of all of their advertising directed by women in 18 months, and they were all women from our database. So it was really massive. I can get into more case studies, but I'll try to answer your question better. So once we did that, we started to get a lot of women approaching us and wanting us to bring this to their countries. And what we started doing is basically working with ambassadors in each country. So each country that we go into, we get an ambassador who is a filmmaker in where she is, and we build a database of the women in that country. And we're currently in 17 countries, going on 20. When we do the relaunch, we will be in 20 countries. So it's really a global operation that's growing all the time. And now we are working with all the founders that are coming on board to launch, for the new launch, to also make sure that certain countries that have very low numbers of talent, for instance, Japan or China or places like that where women have even less opportunity, India, the Middle East. So that's kind of our next goal in this year, is to really sort of go into a lot of areas like that.
Free the Bid started with focusing on women directors, but has since expanded to editors, colorists, composers, DPs, etc. Why was it important to address the whole production pipeline?
So what we've seen is that when a woman director takes the job, she's usually looking to have more diversity. She's usually looking to work with more women. She's usually looking to work with more people of color. She's just really conscious of that, being part of a minority herself. It's not a minority. We're actually half of the world. But let's just say, being systemically shut down or shut out. Usually women like to take care of other people who need opportunity. And it was really important for us to create a database that would allow for both filmmakers and producers who want to have a set that has more inclusivity to feel like they can tap into this database and find the talent that they need. I don't believe that things are solved just by having a talent in front of the camera or a director. It's just a matter of having a whole set that has more presentation. And I just made a film, and I know that on my set it was incredibly important to see the input on each department and to make sure that it's rich and that it represents a lot of voices. So that's something that we are going to continue to pursue and actually get more and more into. And in terms of writers and choreographers and a lot of other databases we're working on currently.
Yeah, hearing you talk about this, I just keep thinking about the art of like collaboration, and I'm curious how working on Free the Bid has deepened your collaborative skills and kind of like, contributed to your creativity when kind of going to your filmmaking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think making every project that you make is kind of contribute something, and you learn to trust your instincts too and your intuition about people, which is really important. There's certain people that work well with you and or don't work well with you but work well with others, so it's really a matter of finding your soulmates, your soldiers, your soulmates, your just kind of dream companions, and then you can really fly, and I feel like Free the Bid in general has brought a lot of faith in me, in the power of, I always believed in that, and I worked on political campaigns and things like that, and I kind of am a huge, fan of grassroots in general, but grassroots efforts, but Free the Bid really kind of showed me how powerful it is when people connect around something. And at the same time, I have to say that it also made it clear for me that you have to have some way to tap into the structures of power, right? Like there's systemic stuff that's happening, and there's a whole corporate world that is controlling our life right now more than sometimes governments do. And I would say that in each one of these corporations, usually there's good people. And sometimes the individuals, sometimes you have to find them and connect with them, and they would work for the greater good within the organization or within the corporation, or try to bring change. And I've met a few of those people. I don't know if I can't say in every corporation, but I can say that I met a few really good people that are capable of bringing change, and they lack sometimes the right tools or the right awareness to what is it that they're missing out on. And education, and connectivity are like kind of the best things that we have right now, right? Like the fact that we could still connect to people so easily through social media is something that allowed us in Free the Bid to really kind of unexpectedly bring change from places that we didn't think they're going to come from.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because it's like those individuals are the ones that like are willing to undergo like the examination in the art, yeah.
A lot of people that in film and TV that you'll approach them as a reporter and you'll say, would you talk about something? And they wouldn't talk about it, or they wouldn't want to give an interview because it wouldn't look good for them to admit the numbers or speak about them. And here you see some of the brands that are willing to say, I had 0 fucking women directors on all of our campaigns, and like look at that number and just say, I'm going to change that, and then change it, And that's just an example of what you just said, of people that are willing to stare the problem in the face and just kind of move away from virtue signaling, which is something we see a lot on social media, where people are like, yeah, I'm going to retweet this shit and I'm going to say I'm angry about this fucking thing. But then what do they really do? Like, what are you doing? How are you changing things? And it's, of course, also important to be a, social media activist, and we see that the pressure that conversation has brought is changing so much. But I think that it's really good for each person to find like the one thing they can do in the real world, if they can, where they can influence something, because sometimes they'll get a lot more satisfaction from that if they connect to a community, if they connect to other people on the ground in the real world that are doing something. Sometimes I think like it can be really satisfying more than just being locked in like a train of social media, ramps. Not ramps. Rants. Rants. Not ramps. Yeah, which I used to do, I used to do that. I do that less now. I don't have time.
What is the most exciting accomplishment that Free the Bid has achieved thus far?
I mean, I think we had some pretty big accomplishments in terms of, working with P&G, which is the #1 advertiser in the world. Mark Pritchard, who is the chief brand officer of P&G and is the head of the ANA, which is the Association of National Advertisers, have made Free the Bid a recommendation for every brand to join. So that was a huge thing for us, and joining forces with them and initiatives like See Her, getting recognition from the Sound Institution. All of those things have been incredibly important to us and the global expansion. But I would say that to me, the most exciting accomplishment is literally every time I hear a woman got a job. So every time we get an email that says, holy shit, I was on your site for 12 hours and I just got booked on a job. And we have those testimonials on our site. It's pretty dorky, but I'm so proud of each one of them. And I know that for me, it was really important that women get hired, because it's one thing to be invited to some world that speaks about diversity and be in events that speak about inclusion and be included in lists, but to really actually be hired and get paid for what you do it was my goal. So every time I see that happens, that's my biggest accomplishment, period.
You've reached an exciting point in Free the Bid's development. Can you tell us about what's next?
Yes. So, if you're on this site right now listening to this, you already know what's up. That's Free the Work. So our next thing that we're doing is basically launching this, service that you're on right now, which is a talent discovery service. It's a global talent discovery service that allows both filmmakers, emerging filmmakers, professional filmmakers, and industry leaders, both from advertising, TV, and film, and music labels to connect together in one destination and discover talent and share it. And it's built in a similar way to other services we love. So it's kind of like if you could say a Spotify meets IMDb Pro was what I was going for, with hints of Instagram and Masterclass thrown in. So it's a place where you can discover talent, create playlists, share them, work together with your teams on finding the right talent, and then also get mentorship and find sort of your tribe, your community. And we also launched a tracking tool which would allow brands and TV networks or film studios to kind of track their diversity efforts. I think there's so many incredible initiatives that are trying to bring change and so much awareness that does come from everything I spoke about before on social media. But what we really want to do is track those numbers and quantify them, so we don't all wait all year for Stacy Smith, who's wonderful and does an incredible job, but that we could in real time see if our efforts are working and where are they not working, where are they failing, which one of the production companies we're working with or the ad agencies we're working with are doing the heavy lifting and which are just saying they are. So and that's not to say that we're looking for who to blame, but just who needs more support and who needs more tools and who needs to ignite their passion to really work for this, so this is a reality in a few years and we don't just like step up 1% or 2% every year.
The advertising, film, TV, and media worlds are all different. How will Free the Work tackle the different issues in each industry?
It's true that the advertising world, a lot of it deals with triple bidding, which is a system that we managed to kind of disrupt with the idea of asking brands and ad agencies to commit that on each triple bid, one woman would get to be heard, and that is something that we now feel like we kind of grew beyond that. I think that in film and TV, what we're seeing now is, of course, there's pitching, there's shadowing, there's all sorts of initiatives that are going on. I can speak in length probably about each one of them and how I feel about them, but I'll focus on your question. What I think our biggest impact is going to be is to really allow for the people that are interested in change to commit to, they don't have to commit to hire women or diverse creators, as we like to call them now. It's the idea of really getting people into the room and meeting them and listening to them and being aware of talent when you do look for it, and not thinking that you have to work off some Excel sheet somebody made that has a list on it that you heard is pretty good of a few women directors, which is what I keep hearing all the time. It's like there's some list that somebody made, and even in the bigger talent agencies, there is no internal database of these things. So what we want to do is really give a tool for all of these initiatives and all of these people that are doing incredible work already, and to say, here's a tool that you can integrate into whatever it is you're doing. And it would allow you to really start to organize yourselves and look at talent and understand that you've been kept away from a pool of talent that you are constantly thinking of as a risk, which is something we hear a lot. It's they took a risk and worked with such and such, and really the only risk here is you not educating yourself about this pool of talent, because this pool of talent is the future, and this pool of talent is the light that was kept out. They're not meant to be shadowing and in the shadows of men. They're meant to be in the front, so they just need opportunity. So that's what we're going to probably do, is open up the gates and allow people to be seen.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit more about shadowing? I know that you mentioned it in your speech for your award at Sundance, and I think a lot of people might view shadowing as like, oh, it's a great opportunity and yay, we get to see it, but there is definitely something else underneath it all. And so, yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some great opportunity there. I think that there's definitely a change we see in numbers in television. I think it's mostly because of people like Eva DuVernay and people that really go and hire women and do a lot for them. I think that in terms of the shadowing, there's a few great programs that guarantee hiring after the shadowing program. I'm not going to get into who does what and give grades to everybody, but I think that we, the women and the people that are doing these shadowing programs, and I haven't done one, I'm really kind of talking from experience of hearing from a lot of women that are on our database or just connected to me some way or another. There's a feeling that it's like a checkbox that you have to go through in order to even be considered. And on top of that, we know that many of these programs do not guarantee hiring. There's women that go into a period of 3 months of shadowing and never get paid even, or have their expenses paid, and come out of it broken, like just come out of it with no opportunity and no money and in a debt. So the percentage of how many women get hired from each shadowing program are very low, and there's no regulations of it by the DGA. They're doing their best efforts to be involved in positive ways and get reports, but there's no regulation. So you don't have to pay a woman when she's shadowing. You don't have to pay for her expenses or travel, and you don't have to hire her. So what you're really getting is a campaign to show that you are inclusive, but you're not necessarily helping the people that need to be helped with opportunity. And it's very sad when I meet women that have gone to 3 or 4 or 5 of these, and never even got a phone call back or never even met the showrunner. So that does exist out there, and I really want people to know that and be conscious when they do get into one of these, to check if it's a serious one, to check who's behind it, to check that they get seen, meet somebody on the show. Don't just spend all your money and not work for months and months and get into debt or not see your kids and all sorts of things like that if you don't feel that it's a serious program.
Who else are you hoping to support with this expansion? Is it other underrepresented filmmakers?
Yes, 100%. We are set to expand beyond women. I think that the work we've done in the advertising world was very focused on women directors. It started like that because I am a woman director, and that was my reach. But I have seen how many other people need this initiative and should be celebrated and seen. We're going to, first of all, have trans-identifying people, non-binary people, and in general just expand beyond the gender definitions of women, but also include people of color, and hopefully with time just expand more and more into as many categories as we can, so we can just make sure that the intersectionality on the site and the marginalized communities that don't get to be considered for jobs have a place where they can be seen again and also supported. One of the things that we're going to do for emerging filmmakers is to give them a lot of tools, to give them a lot of opportunities to get discounts on equipment and really great discounts that I myself would have appreciated in my first years when I was doing work, and know how much it means to get equipment like that. So that's some of the stuff that we're going to do to make sure that people get a better chance at building a reel that then can kind of graduate into the database itself. So the idea is to really build the pipeline too, and to be global with that, right? Because a lot of the places that we go into need workshops, need mentoring, and they're not in a situation to afford to go for 3 months or 4 months somewhere every day and not get paid, So we want to come in and help with that.
What is your vision for Free the Work in revolutionizing the industry?
I think that what we're seeing today already in the film and TV industry and in the advertising industry is the first hints of what's possible. We're seeing films with women leads that are succeeding beyond any expectation. We're seeing commercials that are portraying women differently than they've ever been portrayed before, and I think that that's just the beginning, and we still see how marginalized a lot of these efforts are. So we still see that women are mostly invited to direct advertising that speaks to supposedly other women because it's a hygiene product or something, right? We want to break out these barriers. We see women directors that are expected to direct only films that have a woman lead or that speak to some empowerment notion that is sometimes forced on them by a boardroom of white men. So we really hope to see inclusion and diversity becoming something that doesn't need to be coined, and that the language around it doesn't need to sound like underrepresented and things like that, and terms like that, and just really start to see the talent on our site and being integrated not only for those kind of projects, because I think that's when we're really going to start to have new point of views and hear stories we've never heard before, and creativity will have a renaissance. So that's what I'm aiming for, a renaissance of creativity,
So you're working on Free the Work, you have your own creative projects, you have a film coming out very soon. How do you stay creatively inspired, and what keeps you excited to keep doing the work?
it's really a mixture of, I guess, memories and being present. People, just loving people, being inspired by talent and being inspired by stories and by people's needs to be seen and to be loved and to connect with others. And my family, visiting my country, every time I go to visit it, with all of the violence and the conflict and the situation that's there, that it politically doesn't sit with me, obviously, but I still find so much spirit when I go there, and just actually getting outside of America sometimes for trips, and I feel like it's really easy wherever you live in the world to feel like that's the center, and every time you travel out, you kind of can really see the illusion of that, so that's always helpful. And then just, my dog's eyes, things like that. It's just like the usual.
We end with our rapid response segment, 3, 2, 1, action. Start with 3. Your most influential favorite film that's coming to mind right now.
So I'm not going to be rapid about this. Okay. I'm just going to say that I don't have one.
Great.
It's really important for me to say that. But I would say today that Streetwise was a huge influence on me. Before I even knew it's called Streetwise, it's by Mary Ellen Mark and director Mark Bell, who's her husband. And she's a photojournalist. I don't know if you know her, but she's exceptional. And I saw this movie on TV when I was pretending to be sick. I always didn't go to school when I was little. And I didn't know what it was, but it shaped me. And then after I made my first film, my ex-husband, bless his soul, a good friend of mine, Boaz Yakin, told me, shit, this reminds me of Streetwise. And I watched Streetwise, and I was like, fuck, I saw this when I was 7. This movie's made me. So, yeah, that's like a big film for me.
2, dream person you would like to work with?
I don't know. I really hope to work with a woman actress in my next film. Like, I just made a film with 3, I think, the best male actors I could have worked with. And I had such an incredible experience, and I really hope in my next film to work with a woman, but I'm not sure who she is yet. I do dream about her, though.
1, best advice you've ever received?
I got so much good advice, so it's really, again, hard to choose one. But there's this old man I met once, and he told me that he wasn't probably that old. I was just very young, but he was probably my age. I'm kidding. No, he was older. But he said to me that certain people know how to appreciate life and certain people don't. And those that don't know how to appreciate life can't change. And those that do can grow. And I don't know that it's an advice. It's kind of a depressing saying more than an advice, but it really made me think about who I am in the context of that, and also about a few people in my life at the time that perhaps I was very attached to and were not appreciative of life from whatever pain they were going through. I don't agree with him that you can't change, but it did really it stuck with me, and I think that to appreciate life, to appreciate the fact that you have life, is kind of something that I really work to nourish and nurture in others.
And action. What are you most looking forward to right now?
Sleep. It's really, every time I can sleep, it's like super cool. Sleeping and dreaming, There we go. That's it.
And lastly, where can people follow Free the Work and your own work on social media, the new website?
You can follow me on Instagram, which is where I'm at always. That's where I live. I live on Instagram on my profile. I don't really exist anywhere else. This is all an illusion. And then other than that, Free the Bid still is very active in all of our channels because we haven't properly transitioned into Free the Work. But we shall, and we will inform you about all the handles to handle.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for joining us, Alma.
Thank you for having me.
You can find us at afemalelens.com and at afemalelens on Instagram and Twitter. You can email us at afemalelens@gmail.com. And you can download the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on Apple Podcasts, where we'd love it if you left us a review.
Our theme song was composed by Jesse Nelson. Our logos are by Megan Cafferty. This podcast is produced by Jennifer Zollett and Larkin Bell.